And hello and welcome, everyone. Um, I'm Joe from Brothers Crin, and I'm joined by Alucard, um, also known as Dracula, except it's turned around. But anyways, well, since we're streaming on YouTube, I may as well introduce us to the YouTube audience. We met over on Substack, um, where you've been joining with the Warrior Wednesday and Sword and Saturday crew, and also the whole what I jokingly called I think earlier, the Fellowship of Substachia, or uh, which is a joke itself out on what one guy called Substakistan for fun. Everybody just keeps just dubbing it random names like that for fun, but I think we're the only website where people are wholesome and do that sort of thing. It's not like Twitter or YouTube where, eh. Um, if I
Definitely
sound
less.
prejudiced,
It's less vain, that's for sure.
yeah, although I think we have better reason to be vain because better sight.
Right.
Yeah, I used to do a lot more YouTube. I don't like YouTube too much anymore. And
Yeah.
and Twitter just it's a dumpster fire. But anyways,
Yeah. I never been on, believe it or not, I never been on Twitter really. So
don't
I kind of quit social media at a young age. I just never got into it. But now I'm kind of looking at it for some marketing stuff, but I never really got into it.
Okay. Well, I'll just say Twitter is not useful. It's trash. Um, I've tried Blue Sky and I'm kind of bored. I don't know if that's a good mentality to have. Instagram is mostly girls. So it's, I don't know how to even get a following over there. I know a few guys who succeeded, but I don't know how. Um, and YouTube, I got no clue. Um, YouTube takes so long and it's so random. The algorithm is so wonky. Yeah. So Substack's really the best place along with DeviantArt, I think. I know some guys who've gathered quite the following on DeviantArt, but it usually requires a lot of drawing and painting talent. If you have that, you'll do great.
Right.
But DeviantArt is pretty tricky. Substack's probably the easiest place to be on.
Yeah, I find it's pretty good so far. As I said, I didn't do a lot of social media, but it's a very
Mhm.
welcoming community, and it's pretty organic and just chilled, and you kind of just pretty quickly meet other people that are similar interests to you. Whereas on YouTube and stuff, I think you're right. The algorithm, I know nothing about it on the technical side, but it does seem like it's more oriented around what's already popular rather than subject categories. So if you're
Yeah,
popular, it kind of,
yeah, and I don't know what's popular. It's
well, short, stupid videos, or
yeah,
it's little stupid dumb videos and stuff. But also, all the guys that are big on there have been doing it for like 5-10 years at least, straight, just really dedicatedly posting every day. So it takes work.
yeah. I can't do that, so I'll never make it big on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, but now for both of us, we've drifted into the fantasy category, I guess you'd say, or corner of Substack. Um, and how long have you been there?
Well, really, I've only been substacking for about 2 months. Really,
Oh,
yeah, two
that's
or three
good.
months, and it's
Oh,
it's pretty cool. My original. It's interesting the way the way I guess I developed on Substack, because very quickly I originally went on there to like, okay, this is where I'm gonna promote my book. You know what I mean? It was all like
mhm.
it was like kind of selfish, like marketing. Like, oh great, I'm gonna get on here, I'm
Makes
gonna promote
sense.
my book. You know what I mean? But
No, no, it's not selfish. That's ironically how I kind of ended up on Substack. So I get it.
right, yeah. So, but I have to say that did change because it became more rather than I'm just here to try and get everyone else to read my stuff. It seemed like more of a community quickly. I've made some great friends on here already, and I guess my viewpoint changed from I just want everyone to read my stuff to no, I want to see how I can help people on here. Deliver stuff that's meaningful to them, and talk to them, interact, and do all that fun stuff. So it's a lot more
Yeah.
organic.
Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of ended up going for the same thing. I tried, well, I'll just market my book. Didn't gain any traction. And then it was just, well, okay, I guess I'll just start writing. I wrote like 1 or 2 articles because some guy annoyed me elsewhere. And I went, well, I'm going to make a case for why chivalry is important. That makes it a little further, then make it a little further, and just stumbling around in the dark till I discovered the fiction event. And my Substack didn't take off till I published 1 chapter of Brotherhood of the Gemstone. People wanted more of the chapters. I was not sure if I should post more chapters. So I wrote I started writing a new book in the same style that was Norse, and, just throw that one out, as to appease the people. And that's when it took off because people liked the Norse story more than they liked the Scottish one.
Okay.
But yeah, so, like, it's something which I think with everyone goes on and with one idea in mind, and then suddenly, you get whiplash and you're going in a different direction. It's more like a salon over there. And I remember one guy came in just to screw around. Then he suddenly, because he had gone through prison, he started writing about his prison stories and what he had endured in prison and whatnot. And suddenly shot up to like 4,000 subs because everybody loved his stories.
Yeah.
Then he quit. He just suddenly quit because he said, I want to go analog. I don't want to be on computers anymore. Just shut down his account from one day to the next and said, like, I got 3 daughters. I got more important things to do. Shuts everything down.
All right.
And like he made it that big in like 6 months or something. And he's like, well, I'm done. And just shuts it down. You have everyone, where did Coleman go? No, where's Coleman? Then a few people find out, oh yeah, he just wanted to quit. He got sick of it. And it's like, oh, that sucks. So if you ask around a lot of the older people, they're like, oh yeah, Coleman, that legend, the son of a, he quit. It's like, but everybody loved him.
Yeah, I wish I had 4,000 subscribers.
Yeah, but anyways, for fantasy, which is really our focus of interest, you prefer dark fantasy, and what kind exactly?
Yeah, so what I've been, I've read a lot of books. If anyone saw my reading list that I published recently, it's quite a chunky. I've chunked through a lot of stuff in the last couple of years, especially. And I kind of found myself just going backwards, and I read, like, obviously Harry Potter, like obvious fantasy like that. And I guess Wheel of Time.
I've never read that one.
Oh yeah, read all those. It's pretty good as well. And I can't think of, but that's what I think of as like fantasy. But then as I started going older in writing, I noticed that the fantasy seemed a little different. Like it was a little grimmer and it was a little closer to sword and sorcery. Even Lord of the Rings, obviously I read all those, and that's fantasy too. But I like the stuff where it's like, like Jack Vance, The Dying Earth, where it's like you can't just cast a spell and fix everything, or you can't just.
No.
It's like oh, there's magic here, there's magic there, and everyone's got all these magic items, and everyone's super powerful. You know what I mean? As opposed to you've got this one, like, that's why I love the original Dying Earth books. It's like the master wizard who studied for like 80 years or 500 years or something is like, he can only remember 5 spells at one time. And that's where he maxes out. And because it's so hard to master these things, that it becomes scarce, And I think when you have a scarcity in a story, it becomes a lot more interesting, or it's almost closer to real, or it's a little bit more dangerous. And I think I really enjoy that part. Or like Conan, where it's kind of like it's almost real, and you couldn't really do that, but you kind of could do that, with some of the stunts that he pulls with his fighting and swords and stuff. But it's not just teleporting around everywhere and everything can be solved with a spell and all that kind of stuff.
It's not Harry Potter or
Yeah,
Earthsea or something. It's all right. Um, and even technically, Tolkien wrote sort of Sword and Sorcery of Children of Hurin, although that's much more of
yeah,
a tragedy. The problem
yeah,
with Tolkien and Howard is that they weren't really writing sword and sorcery or epic fantasy or anything. They were looking at like medieval literature and Norse sagas and saying, "Well, I'm going to continue that sort of literature."
right.
And that it's just after their deaths, everyone. Well, no, wait, it was around the 50s or 60s that people started saying they're fantasy writers. And Tolkien, I remember reading up, found it a little irritating. I was like, no. Um, and Tolkien even was asked in one interview by Descamps, "Do you even read fantasy?" No. He's like, "No, none of them are any good." He
Mm,
just bluntly was like, "No, they suck." He's like, "I'd like to read one that could break my story, but like defeat Lord of the Rings and outdo it." But he's like, "They all suck."
okay.
And he was given apparently a Weird Tales magazine at one point, and he just annotated it. But he did not annotate the Black Colossus, I think it was, because apparently he liked it. He just simply said it's good. So
Yeah.
there was a bit of an acknowledgement of Howard. It's interesting that those two didn't read their own, what people say is their own genre, but I'd argue you could see the difference between others and them. Others were like, well, I'm writing fantasy like those two, but we're not writing that. We're writing sagas. And they would look to the Norse myths and they'd be like, we're writing sagas like that. Or
Hmm.
a grand epic for England. I'm not writing fantasy. So there's a bit of like researching more into it. It's a bit interesting that,
Yeah, it almost
um,
borders. It's definitely sword and sorcery, and it almost borders on mythology. A little bit.
yeah,
And
well,
yeah,
they were trying to write mythologies for Texas and England, respectively. So you know, I think that's why they're apart from everyone else is because they didn't have the same vision as everyone. At least that's what I think. They didn't think in the same way, and it makes it very interesting how um, different they are. Like Lewis was like, "Oh yeah, I'm writing fantasy," but Tolkien was like, "Nope, I'm not doing that.
right.
I'm writing a myth for England," and it's just well, Tolkien called it fairy stories,
Hmm.
which because he's an older generation, he didn't like fantasy didn't seem like the appropriate term to him. I think he was looking at fairy tales or fairy stories,
Hmm.
but
Yeah,
um,
and I don't think there's anything wrong with fantasy either if you like it.
either
And I think
no,
there's,
it's a good
I
thing.
loved Harry Potter. It's amazing. But and the Wheel of Time as well. But what inspired me to write was, I originally was playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons as well, and
Mhm.
with Obsidian Blackbird, who's another Substacker on that. He's a good friend of mine, and the difference between his campaign and just five E standard edition campaigns or whatever is you're not like level 4 characters with all these magic items slaying dragons. In his we started as we ended up having a really brutal, bloody fight. We were both shipwrecked, and we were level 1, and we had no clothes. Even we just had like some rough, just like no armor, nothing, and we were just all we had for a weapon was a piece of rusty chain, and we had to fight this tough half orc pirate that was drunk in the waves. So it was just a brutal, bloody fight, beating this half drunken half orc to death with a rusty chain in the waves, and that was the experience with the D&D with him, and I'm not saying it has to always be that rough, but it was like that's hard, it adds more dangerousness and more reality to the game, and that's kind of
Yeah,
also that's how I got into Jack Vance because he recommended it, and a lot of stuff's been based on Jack Vance and it's similar with Jack Vance. I think the whole story of Kugel's saga is probably my favorite. Kugel's saga. It's so funny, so weird, and there's just monsters that he can't necessarily beat, so he has to avoid them instead, or talk his way out of it, or he might get one spell through the whole book, so.
So if I may ask, when it comes to your writing, I read your one comedy story, but is that the norm with most of your writing, or do you also write like stuff like Conan or what have you?
So the chapter that it's really just a portion of the large novel that I wrote. So I wrote basically it's a comedy, dark fantasy comedy novel. It's a full book, and that's The Living Light from Gods to Ashes. And so that was just one little section from it that you read. And so I wrote that book, and then my other writing, I've been writing basically grim or horror, like grim fantasy or horror short stories. But they're totally different to this style that my major big novel is.
So the grim, you mean like Brothers Grimm style horror?
When I say grim fantasy, I just mean it's like a little dark, and that's like a whole nother series of short stories I want to release. The one I do have online is the Japanese one called The Banquet of the Fairies, and that one's on Substack, the whole thing, and that's a Japanese mythology. That one's really Japanese, like dark fantasy Japanese, where a little boy gets, he gets tricked by this really creepy Oni, which is like a Japanese devil, right?
Yeah, I know what it is.
Yeah, and he gets tricked and pulled into the water, and he has to basically think his way out of it and get out of it.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of stories like that in Japanese mythology.
Yeah, so I kind of continued on. Yeah, so that's like one thing. It's totally different, but my major, I guess, passion that was this novel I wrote, which is really comedy. It's like, and that was, you just read like a little portion of it. Yeah, okay. And that one, it's very funny. There's definitely Conan type stuff in it, but there's always a comedic twist to most of the book, I would say, and there's a lot of satire, and it's hard, as I said before in my post, it's hard to kind of talk about my own writing because it sounds kind of stupid, but what I can talk about is what I really love in fantasy and Jack Vance type books is not just it's all about the plot, right? I don't like it when the whole book is about this large scale plot and you're just waiting to see what happens next, and they keep hooking you along, and sometimes you don't even like the part that you're reading. You're just reading it to try and get to the part that you like reading, or you're reading it to try and find out what happens next. And what I liked about, for example, Kugel's Saga and Eyes of the Overworld is that the whole story is interesting. The writing itself is interesting. All the little moments, the funny conversations, the funny things that characters say, the dialogue, and it makes you feel like this cozy feeling where you're just watching like this really funny sitcom, and you're just kind of taking you through the book, and you're not just reading this because you have to find out what happens. You're enjoying every moment of it, of the little moments, as you go through it, and this, I feel like it's like that with Conan as well. It's like you're just enjoying the action moments throughout the story. You're not just trying to. It's not all about the plot. It's about the story itself and the moments within it, and that's the way I wrote this book, because I read everything I could find of Jack Vance, and I read everything I could find of Robert E. Howard, and I wanted more adventure. And so I basically this is my effort to, like you said, you're continuing the Norse adventure. This was me trying to continue the next Jack Vance Dying Earth book, comedy with some Conan mixed into it as well, and that's what my passion was, because I love reading it, so I wanted to keep it going,
Hmm. All right. Well, I have to admit I've never heard of the Dying Earth story or Jack Vance before,
Hmm.
so
Have you
I
heard of
I just
the
looked
Demon Princes?
what?
Have you heard of the Demon Princes
Nope.
series or the
Nope.
Leoness series?
I've heard of that one.
Okay, well that's him. That's Jack Vance. Um,
Oh, okay. Huh.
yeah.
So you mostly focused on doomed plots and whatnot.
Well, it's I guess I'm speaking as if for people who know what he's like. But I would really recommend reading The Demon Princes or one of his books.
Oh,
Particularly, it's very hard to describe how good it is until you actually read it. But
hmm.
it's it's the Dying Earth series is basically set in the future of Earth, where the sun is actually dying,
Yeah,
and so
it's dying. I just looked it up.
yeah. So the sun is dying, and then so the planet has kind of run its course, and there's a very decadent culture of very few people left behind, and there's all these strange creatures and things, and it's magic, but there's also the results of science, and you're not really sure if magic came from science or science came from magic, and
Mm.
it's staged, and then the point is there's this grand setting, but the story isn't about that. The story is about this one guy who basically tries to steal off a wizard, gets his ass kicked, and then spends the entire book trying to get back home because the wizard teleported him to the other side of the planet, and he's just trying to get home, and that's like the whole book, and he goes through a series of crazy adventures, and he keeps like messing up the whole way, and it's very funny. But
Okay.
that's
Um, well,
yeah.
if I may ask, what's your favorite fantasy movie?
Oh, I mean, well, yeah, definitely Conan 1980, 1982. Conan is probably the best fantasy
Hmm.
movie. And the best
Okay.
recent was the Honor Among Thieves. They actually did a pretty good job at that.
Hmm. I'll admit I really like Dragonheart and Merlin from 1998 a lot better.
Oh, okay.
Merlin's Arthuriana. Dragonheart is kind of semi-Arthuriana because it's supposed to be centuries later. But I
Yeah,
really like that one because it's mostly a Socratic dialogue.
yeah. I would, I didn't even think of that, but I was so young when Dragonheart came out, and Merlin too. I was probably 8 years old. Um, but it was I remember it was, yeah, Dragonheart is legendary, but it was so sad
Mm.
that I kind of blocked it out of my mind. I didn't have it on my list because it was,
Oh,
you know.
right, because of that last scene.
Oh
Where will we look to without you, Draco? To the stars, Bowen. To the stars. And then he
yeah,
just dies.
yeah, the
Yeah, it was
dying man.
tragic.
Yeah. Anyway,
But
so I really don't. I'm a bit of a wimp, really. I'm a bit of a softie. I don't like
it's
watching
okay.
really bad movies. I prefer funny movies and action movies.
Okay. Do not watch Merlin 1998. It is the
I think I did see
probably
it.
one of the two saddest movies I've ever seen. Because yeah, it's the Arthurian myths
Yeah,
basically from
I
Merlin's
think I did
perspective.
see it.
Yeah, Sam Neill and whatnot. But the problem is, like Arthur dies, so Merlin has to, you know, because they posit him as a father figure to Arthur. So of course
Yeah,
his son dies for all intents and purposes, loses his wife, and even his mentor loses his wife. And it's like, wow, everybody's losing someone. Um, Also, but yeah, it's probably tied up with Moon as the saddest movie I've ever seen.
I didn't.
If you
I
want,
don't know. Yeah.
do not watch Moon. Do not watch Moon. It is horribly tragic and sad.
Yeah.
Uh,
Worse,
I've seen grown men bawl. Um, if
is,
you want
is
a good funny,
I
pause,
was saying it's
just
worse than the Titanic because I remember sitting watching that in the cinema.
oh, Titanic's cheerful compared to these two movies. Um, yeah, like Titanic is cheerful. Um, but I don't get the point of Titanic. Um,
Yeah, there's too many points in that that were like, oh, why does it have to be that way? But it was still
I don't
sad.
get it. Yeah, I
The
don't
sad
get the
part
movie.
for me wasn't the couple. The sad part for me was the little kids on the ship, you know. But anyway,
That's fair.
yeah.
I was gonna comment if you want a funny fantasy movie, there's always the Disney ones or uh well, this is kind of um dark, but it's also comedic and it's also a little deeper. The Tenth Kingdom. You might like that one. Seven and a
Okay,
half hours long.
the
It's one of the
movie.
longest movies out there. It's 7.5 hours. It's like it's a monster. But
Wow.
like when you watch it, it's epic. Like there is a massive sprawling plot, but it's very character driven as well. So
Okay.
like the plot is basically the characters and the characters are the plot in a way. It's like it's
Right.
so intermixed together. You can't get almost one without the other, really.
No.
It's hard to explain it, but it's Portal Quest. So the characters are in the real world and they plunged into a fairy tale world,
Okay.
and they have to try to survive and stop the evil queen. And
Hmm.
that's the entire movie. But
Okay.
it's 7.5 hours of them screwing up, bungling up, and like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I wish I had Midas's golden touch,
Mm-hmm.
and screws that one up worse than Midas ever did. Then okay, well that wish didn't work out. Let's wish for something else. No, stop wishing. You're not good at it. They keep doing this, and they keep bungling from one thing to the next. Um, and it's just, but it's got the most touching father daughter bond in cinema. It's just so damn touching. Um, so
That
you might
sounds good.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's funny. I
Um,
can't. Yeah. I
mhm.
was gonna say, did you read the Witcher books?
No, I tried reading through the first book and then I got bored and just threw it away. It just
Okay.
it seemed tripe and bad.
Yeah.
Um, but well,
Well, I
I'm
like the
somewhat
Witcher.
of a
Yeah.
yeah, it's fine. I'm somewhat of a snob. Like
Hmm.
I'll freely admit I'm a bit of a snob. If it doesn't measure up, I'm just gonna go bleh. But
Hmm.
people have been telling me now, Joe, you gotta play the Witcher 3. You're gonna have to play that. Oh, I don't know. I didn't like the book. No, no, you
It was
don't
so
know
good.
what you're talking about. Yeah, and people are like, no, no, this is way better, Joe.
Yeah.
And I've had this going on for like 2 years. People are like, no, no, you're gonna have to play this. You're gonna have to play
Yeah.
this. You're gonna have to play that. So I'm probably gonna play it, but the problem is it's like 100 gigabytes. I don't
Yeah.
have that space on my computer. I need a new computer for it.
Yeah. No, it's
But
worth. I played all the Witcher games, and I read all the
okay.
books, and I think it's an amazing world, and it
Hmm,
definitely grim. You know, it's grim dark. You know, or grim or dark fantasy, and again, it's
okay.
very low magic, and it borders on the, and it's a lot of mythology, and it borders on reality. But then there's these really funny comedic parts twisted in the middle of it too. You know, where the Witcher's got himself. He's like in this river, like, and he's trying to fight this monster, and it's full of. He's just stuck in this all this crap in the river, and it's really stinky and it's gross, and he's just stuck in there, you know,
Okay.
while save this kid's life. And I can't remember exactly the funny parts of it, but it's something the way it was written was so funny, and it's just a
Okay.
weird mix of this danger and then humor mixed together, and that's what I really like.
Well, I enjoyed Fable and Fable 3, so maybe I'll enjoy the Witcher game. Um, who
Yeah,
knows? But like I said, it's just a matter of gigabytes because I don't have any space on my computer, and it's like 100 gigabytes
hmm,
on computer, and I have no idea how to get around that.
yeah, yeah. You just have to
But
get more space.
yeah, yeah, but I can't afford a computer right now.
Fair enough.
Um,
There's better
not
things
when
to do.
I'm yeah, not when I'm having to save up money for moving and then for work and then saving up for a house after that. But okay, so you're a Witcher fan.
And what about? I'm
So
just trying to find something that you would have read that that I've also read. What about the Terry Pratchett books? Did you like Terry Pratchett?
I've not read them. I've read Peter Beagle's Last Unicorn. It's one of my favorite books.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that one. I've read a few of the Conan and Cole pastiches of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really like the Call movie from like 97, I think it is.
12 was awesome.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it's you have a lot of people online. Oh, it was such trash. Me, it was the most awesome thing ever. How could you hate it?
it was pretty
But
good.
then I thought,
I love
but
all
on the
those
other
movies.
hand, yeah, same. But then you've got some friends of mine who are like, yeah, but the actress isn't very good. And it's like, yeah, but Tia Carrera's hot. And then everyone goes, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the important part. But let's see. I've read Tolkien. I've read Dragonlance. Well, Brothers Grimm.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I've read Dragonlance.
Mm-hmm.
I've read most fantasy novelizations of movies because I just thought those were cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. Um,
Do you read any Roger Zelazny?
no,
Okay.
a lot of my taste has run towards medieval and classic lit, like the Iliad, the Odyssey,
Mm-hmm.
the Aeneid, Roland, Comte de Monte Cristo,
Oh, I
Great
love that.
Expectation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And the Three
Trois
Musketeers.
Mousquetaires.
Yeah,
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 but
I
I've
love.
got them in French, so
Yeah.
not. I don't have them in English. Currently, I'm reading through them, and uh, I will, and then I'm going to go to Les Miserables with Victor Hugo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think, and then I'm also planning to start on Journey to the West because I love those stories. But yeah, not as um, well. I'm probably not as well read as what people think in the fantasy genre.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, but I've read like a lot of trashy fantasy. When
Okay.
I say that, I don't mean like dirty or porno. I mean like just the like 1 star stuff that like everybody threw on the like on the $5 rack and are like, oh, this is such trash. I've read all the worst fantasy stuff like Harry Potter and whatnot. I've read the
Love
trash,
that. I think Harry Potter is awesome. It's great.
but now Harry Potter I detested, but um there's that snob side of me. But like there's stuff like Aragon I read as a kid and I enjoyed, but then I tried getting back to it and I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um I've got I've been meaning to get to the Sword of Shannara, but it's just hard for me to get there with all the mountain of books I have to read. Um there's of course the Hyborian Age. There's a couple of sword and sorcery stuff from the 80s here and there. So like I said, I tend to read a lot of this stuff. Oh, and there's also one of the Red Sonja books, and I'm planning to read number 2.
Nice.
Because why not? Yeah. So um, at times I enjoy really, really crappy stuff. Like like it's like I know it's crap, and I'm just enjoying it because it's just like I was telling my brother. It's just for horror movies, the crappier and the cheesier and the worst it is, the
Yeah.
more I kind of like it. It's like because I just did
Yeah.
a review on
Tell me.
another channel, like Ouija, I think it is, The Origin of Evil, and I'm like, this is such trash.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have any popcorn anymore, but I'm like, damn, I'm
Yeah, like
enjoying
The
this.
Walking Dead 3. The Walking Dead 3 was great.
Okay, I'll have to watch those. Yeah, it's
Or
like
Living Dead. You know the one where he has to chain. He loses his arm. He chops his arm off and then puts a chainsaw on there.
oh yeah, yeah. I've watched a bit of that one. Yeah, I
That's
enjoy
awesome.
that. It's like that's the thing. I'm either the guy who enjoys Wind in the Willows and Tolkien and that and getting snobby, but then the next minute I'm watching the trashiest stuff and I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm living as God intended me to. But yeah, and but like I said, I've probably not read. You're probably better read in some ways than I am in the genre. I've read like Narnia. I've read all the old stuff, but there's a lot of stuff I've not read. Um, for some reason, I've just fixated on older lit and whatnot, and a lot of times I forget about present day stuff, and people have to thrust it in front of me, and then I pick it up.
Right.
And I've been
Well,
reading a lot of indie stuff on Substack, so
yeah. Yeah.
it's just I really enjoyed 80s fantasy and then like the comics, the movies, the books, and even radio dramas. But
Yeah.
then, as the 80s and 90s died, I kind of fell off.
Right.
Like, I think the most recent stuff I've read, which if it's not Dragonlance or Cull from the 90s, it would probably be Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn,
Okay.
which is pretty good. But the last two book, well, to Green Angel Tower and the second book were so-so, while Dragonbone Chair is still one of the most phenomenal books I've ever read.
Cool. What about anime? You ever watch any anime?
A few.
Okay.
Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh, Yu Yu Hakusho, Monster
Mhm.
Rancher. Weirdly, I've not seen that one in years, and I have fond memories.
Okay.
As a kid, I watched Sailor Moon. Well, I
Yeah.
say kid, but I was a teen. For the Greek mythological references. And there was, because the minute I found out there was Greek mythology in there, I was curious.
Hmm.
And my sister liked it, so it was a chance to bond with her.
Yeah. So
There's Red.
my sister used to make me watch that with her as well.
It's kind of cringe, but the manga's better. There's Record of Lotus War, and there's this new Dungeons and Cooking one on Netflix I'm quite liking.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I
I,
haven't. Yeah, I
okay,
watched.
it's trash, but I'm enjoying it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm a huge anime lover and Japanese culture lover. So I studied
Mm,
Japanese language in college for 2 years.
same.
I love it. I got my hands on all the anime I could possibly get. For anyone who
Ever
watches
what?
this, what's that?
Well, you'll probably like our Radio Nippon section of Brothers Grin. It's where we have a lot of anime analysis, essays, and whatnot.
Okay, yeah, I
Um,
checked it out.
yeah, I'm also writing a samurai fantasy novel because
Okay.
um, the when I traveled to Japan last, I tried asking around a few bookstores, like, "Do you have anything like that?" And nope. And
Wow.
you ask the job. There's no one. No one writes like samurai fantasy fiction. No
Weird.
one
Right. You
writes
know why
fantasy.
they're doing manga? That's why. That's really why.
Well,
And
yeah, but they
anime.
don't really put. They never put the Japanese mythological or historical in
Hmm.
there. They
Right.
only Miyazaki did, and him it was from the point of view of the Ainu. They
Yeah.
never put. Um, Now the last real, like, there are a few historic fiction authors, obviously, and they're quite good. But I tried asking one girl at a bookstore, and she just like, "Why don't you put samurai stuff in this?"
Mm.
And she said, "Shouldn't I?" And she's like, "I never thought of that." She was a fantasy
Yeah.
nerd, and she's like, "I never
Yeah.
thought of that." And then I asked her, do you not realize how cool samurai are, how gakui they are?"
Right.
"Oh, mochiron, mochiron." She's like, "Yeah, they are the coolest."
Yeah.
And why hasn't anyone written this?
Yeah.
She then
Well.
took a moment and thought about it. Her theory, and I like this one. Yet her, like, because since 1945, we are cut off from our history in a
Mm.
way. And it's in 1945 Japan really became disenchanted in a way. And the trouble is there's a blockage, like a almost a spiritual block or
Yeah.
wall between them and their past.
Yeah.
And and on the other side of the wall is where the samurai and the Shinto and the knowledge of the old ways can be found. So
Yeah.
yeah, I ended up starting on Akuma no Ran as a attempt, like you, to just dip my toe into a bit of Japanese fiction. I've got entire Shinto stories planned later, but the thing with the Japanese is they don't realize how cool they are.
Yeah.
They're like, you ever visit there?
No, I'm going in 3 weeks for my
Oh,
first time.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, once you go there, uh, just know that for one thing, they don't like it when you put your hands in your pocket.
Okay.
Um, they um, they'll correct you on your pronunciation, and um, they're very, very polite and kind and gentle. But you're supposed to basically act like you're supposed to open the door for women, and you're supposed to be polite, and you're supposed to also open the door for ladies and old men. The elders and kids and young girls go before you
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Like
Okay.
they'll, yeah, there's certain decorum you have to observe because they have certain expectations, but they're the sweetest, kindest, gentlest people on earth. But they're morbidly shy and they will stare. Um, many of them outside Tokyo will have never seen a gaijin before, and they'll
Wow.
just be staring at you. And gaijin, um, contrary to what the left and some people on the right think, is not actually a racist term. It just means foreigner. So
No,
they'll call you gaijin san,
yeah.
and but they themselves think it's a little rude, and they'll try to get your name or surname, so they can then call you whatever san.
Right.
And yeah, like I said, they'll be sweet, but don't expect them to know much about samurai. Some of them will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, but there's two things that the internet gets wrong. Everybody's got like one or two kids. Everybody like there's a baby boom basically going on. And um, also on my last trip, I noticed they were a little um, sensitive about certain foreigners, such as Indians, Africans, and Americans misbehaving. So
Yeah. I mean,
they might be a
right
little
now,
testy.
they're definitely getting a bit upset by the different TikTokers and stuff that go over there. I've seen a lot of stuff, so
Yeah,
I'm prepared for that. You know, I'm going to be super polite, and because I studied their
yeah,
culture so much, you
yeah.
know.
Helps if also helps if you like their castles and their history. But since
Yeah.
they have the best history alongside France, it's easy to get into.
Yeah.
Um, but my major in university was not just French and Scottish history, but uh, the history of the Heikei and the Heian Jidai period. And
Cool. Well,
then I started taking interest in Muromachi Jidai, and they got yeah, I still miss that place. If it wasn't
yeah.
for the dog, I'd be moving there and
Well,
never
I think
coming back.
yeah. You would. Well, I love it too. You know, and I think you would probably like that. The story I've got on there, my first Darkmoor. It's
Absolutely.
yeah, it's basically a Japanese fairy tale, and it's heavily inspired by and kind of reminds me of Spirited Away, the movie.
I love that movie.
Yeah, so it's got vibes like that, Spirited Away vibes. So you will really like that, and it's only 38 pages. It's a little short story, so but it's quite
Hmm.
popular. So I might have to keep writing more of those Japanese style ones because the other ones aren't Japanese so far.
Okay,
The
I'll have
style,
to swap stories with you.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's Japanese tattoo art. It's fully Japanese style. That's the Sun Wukong.
Yep. I know
There he
Sun
is.
Wukong,
Yeah, there's this.
Chinese monkey king.
Here's the monkey god. So,
Yep.
and these are cherry blossoms, with Japanese clouds. So
Sakura.
that was done by a traditional Japanese tattoo artist.
Oh.
So I'm fully, Also, I know that I might have to wrap this up when I go there too, because I know that in some places they don't like the tattoos.
No, but there will be those who will be fascinated by it.
Yeah,
Um, that's where you have to ask them if they notice you have a tattoo or it comes up. You have to ask them, "Would you like to see it?"
yeah, yeah. Well,
But on the other hand, but yeah, like on the other hand, there's a whole bowing culture, and there's um, the thing I really enjoyed was that when going there, um, like like in Canada, the police are brutal figures who aren't very friendly and they're not your friends. They don't
yeah,
like you,
it's like
and
that
they
in
hate
Australia,
all Canadians.
unfortunately.
Yeah, but then my experience with officers elsewhere has not always been pleasant. But when going to Japan, it's like they're just the warmest, friendliest guys, and it's like the only thing I got stopped for was, wait, you don't uh what is it? You don't know where you're going? Yeah, yeah, okay. Do you have your money on you? No, I don't have any end on me right now. All right, how about I just pay for your bus pass? Here, we'll call over the bus. All right, good. The bus is here. Let me pay for you. No, no, you don't have to. I'll just
That's amazing.
figure something out. No, no, I'm paying for you. You're a guest. Let me pay for you. And it's like, are you rejecting my kindness? No.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and I was, but then he was like, all right, but first you're gonna shake my hand. Thank you. Good luck, kid. And he's just like, good luck, kid. And gambate. And it's like he says it like it's the most important word in his life. Gambate.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, and it's like, then it's like he was older, so he puts his hand on my head and he's like, I will pray for you. Basically in Japanese, and pushes me onto the bus. And it's like, geez, man. Like nice guy.
That's awesome.
And yeah, like when the bus takes off, he's just there going like this.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, it's like he's acting like a grandpa. And like the police, I've even had one officer, because my friend picks something up off the ground, takes it to the police station because it's lost. I had one officer just like, you want to, oh, you never seen a gun before? Nope. You want to hold mine? Nope. And he's like, oh, come on, I insist. Put the gun on the desk in front of me. And I'm like, I'm not touching it. Oh, well, I guess I can't pull you in then for misappropriating my gun. Like he just did it as a prank, and he knew
Yeah,
I was a
yeah.
wuss. I wouldn't touch it. But like,
I'd be a
and
little
then
bit.
you've got, yeah, like these people are the nicest people on earth. What the devil?
That's my loved
One
one.
second. I did not expect that. There, a call from California. I'll just refuse call. But yeah, trust me, you'll probably find that it's really nice. I have another friend on your Twitter, and he's now on Substack, Log Driver Nationalist, and he went there. And by the time he left, he was singing Japanese folk songs with the
Yeah,
Japanese, and
I love.
he's yeah, like it's um.
Yeah.
I tend to say to John Carter sometimes when we get to chatting a little on Substack. He's another guy who taught English in Japan and has been in and out there. And he said, what I've told him is to go to Japan and know the Japanese is to know love.
Hmm.
And like the Japanese have expectations of foreigners. They also have the attitude we don't want more than so many in our country. Japan
Hmm.
must remain like a 97% Japanese country because it's an ethnicity and language.
Hmm.
But at the same time, they're kind and loving and gentle.
Hmm.
And um, they have a lot of conflict avoidance, but they're very European in a lot of
Hmm.
ways.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
yeah, we were talking about anime, and but yeah, I'm a massive anime lover. So I watched everything I could get my hands on, from Rurouni Kenshin to Ninja Scroll to Naruto, and Bleach, Hunter x Hunter, um, Attack on Titan, Mushishi. I could just go, so forever on Dragon Ball Z, obviously. But Black Clover is another great recent one. But I just love the humor. I love the anime culture and the humor, and I actually managed to work it into my book um, without it being like cheesy or ridiculous somehow. Somehow I worked the anime
oh,
culture. So
okay,
even though it's not a Japanese setting, there are aspects of it, and there's certain people in the book that are a little bit Japanese-like, and because it's set basically on Earth 2.5 million years ago, in like a
wow,
fictional, there's another culture back then that disappeared and left no trace, and the whole storyline's operating back in this other civilization on Earth. With the theory that like Star Wars, right? It happened, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It was like sci-fi, but in the past instead of in the future. So that's
yeah,
kind of what my book is based off as well. And but there's such a grand setting, but then um, like Jack Vance or the Witcher series, there's these little moments that are just so enjoyable. Like what you read was just a little portion of these funny conversations, and it's like that all the way through. And each character is a little bit unique and a little bit immoral, and doing something, trying to get something for themselves, and the main characters are trying to survive, and everyone keeps trying to get something out of them. And but and it's also always bordered on what's possible or real. Like almost everything in there kind of could possibly happen. It could. It's right on the border, and that's why it's almost mythology, almost sci-fi, but it's definitely fantasy. But they'll be doing things like the three characters. There's a very strong female character in it as well, who's basically she's going to be introduced in the next post that I post on it, and her name is Bill, and she is basically this redhead. She's almost like an anime character. Like anyone who's watched anime with that, there's like a chick that's a really good fighter, and she's constantly scolding the boys, and they'll say something stupid, and she'll stop what she's doing to smack him on the side of the head, and then she'll go back to, playing with the cute animal or whatever. And it's, it may not be up your alley as much as maybe, certain, I have a lot of friends that are into anime.
Yeah. My own Japanese story borrows more from Yoshikawa Eiji and his Musashi and his Heike book, and also from Hour of the Dragon, combining that with Shinto and samurai history and whatnot. Because, my interest is more the I don't know if you've ever seen them, the Taiga drama or Jidaigeki. No? Akira Kurosawa.
What are these things?
Akira Kurosawa was a director who specialized in basically samurai, Jidaigeki, Japanese history movies.
Okay, no,
but
I didn't.
The Taiga dramas are because every year Japan releases a new Japanese history drama.
Okay.
And if it's a male character, it's usually a tragedy. And the best ones are Taiheki, which is about Ashikaga Takauji. That was in 1991, and there's the 2012 one, which is my favorite, Taira no Kiyomori, the first Japanese generalissimo who ruled over Japan with an iron fist.
That wasn't Tokugawa, right?
No, Taira no Kiyomori. He ruled from around 1159 to 1181, and he set up the bureaucracy and a lot of the infrastructure, physical and in terms of statesmanship and whatnot, and arranged everything for this samurai government, this Bakufu alliance.
Where does that relate to the Edo period and Tokugawa?
This was several centuries before that. The Edo Jidai begins around the time of 1600, after the Battle of Sekigahara, and when Tokugawa's army slammed into that of Ishida Mitsunari, and Tokugawa came out the victor and established his Tokugawa Bakufu shogunate.
Yeah.
And after that, from there's only a brief hiccup in 1614 to 1615 with the Osaka campaign. And then his government lasts till about 1867, at which point you have the Meiji Restoration.
Yeah.
But and modernization starts to happen with Japan.
Right.
And interesting fun fact, the character in Tom Cruise's Last Samurai movie was actually French.
Okay.
There was such a historic figure, but he was there as an artillery officer to train the samurai in artillery, French artillery, against the Meiji government.
Okay.
But apparently he comported himself with such honor and dignity that he actually did something he wasn't supposed to and participated in the last battle between the samurai and the Meiji government, was very heavily wounded so that he was likely to die. So they sent him back to France to recover. The Pocahontas movie borrowed this theme from his story as well. Um, but he's Jules Brunet was sent back to France. He kept his daisho, his katana and wakizashi.
Hmm.
Went back to France, and since then, Japan and France, after that, in the coming decades, considered themselves sisters, because
Mm.
nations, because Jules Brunet had distinguished himself in the eyes of the samurai, and they still sometimes wrote letters, to my understanding, some of these samurai survivors and him, until his death in 1891.
Okay.
Um, but the interesting thing is just after that, also because France and Japan also developed a bit of a friendly relationship. Um, this might seem weird to a lot of Anglos, but it's especially weird to Americans. But because they were both basically part of Axis in World War II, the two countries kind of bonded
Hmm.
because Japan invaded Vietnam, but with the permission of the Petain government, which petitioned Japan, invade our territory. We need you to secure it. And
Mm.
Japan secured it. And because the Japanese made a request when they were, when France got invaded and conquered by America, France, took back Vietnam for a brief time, and Japan requested, "Can you not push any further? We took Vietnam, you know, in a friendly manner with you. Can you respect us and stop your advancement on the Vietnamese-Chinese border?" France stopped advancing. So there's this very close knit friendship,
Hmm.
which when I went to Japan, they were just like, "You're francophone, you're French Canadian. Oh, say something in French. Bonjour." And it's like, okay, bonjour. And I've got like three cackling old men just going, "He said bonjour to me." He said, "No, he said it to me." And it's like, no, no, I said it to
Wow.
all of you.
So
And
this is
but then with
pretty
the
cool.
ladies, yeah, with
Mm.
the ladies, it's especially popular. I had one baker who asked me if I'd marry his daughter. Because when I was living there, I just kept going to the same bakery, and he's like, "Oh, you like baguette? I've cooked some for you. Okay, thank you. I also have a daughter." And it's like, "Oh, that's nice. I have a daughter.
Classic
She's
Chinese
24."
Japanese
Yeah, he's like, "And
parent.
when your teaching contract expires, you could come here and bake. Would you consider it? Like, you could become my son-in-law." And it's like, wow, okay. It's like, come on, I know you, Joe. You like baking. Yeah, I do, but like, come on. My daughter, she's pretty, right? And it's like, oh boy. And it's like, and you could teach us French. Yeah, okay. It's like that was clearly the goal, to learn French. And
Right.
yeah, but it's just
Also,
interesting how like the Japanese, like, regardless of what happened in the past, they have no grudges.
hmm.
And it's it's something very fascinating about them. And yeah, I think you'll love it. My own stories, like I said, borrow from Shinto and whatnot, but
Hmm.
only a few anime like Lotus War. I've read Vagabondo. Have you ever read that one? It's the Musashi manga. No, oh, it's quite good.
Okay.
If you like Rurouni Kenshin, you'll like this one. It's even darker,
Hmm.
edgier, and funnier in a
Okay.
lot of ways.
Okay.
Rurouni Kenshin is the watered down one. This takes
Okay.
place right after the Battle of Sekigahara,
Yeah.
and you'll learn a lot of history because it's like a history lesson, but it's teaching you like while entertaining you. But like you might have like for example Musashi, the greatest warrior in history.
Hmm.
Uh, Now in the manga, he was abused as a kid, so like he's trying to deal with the fact that his dad would beat him or hated him, and that's plaguing his mind. And all the villagers hated him, but he's ultimately trying to be a better man, and he's
Hmm.
working through this stuff while becoming the greatest swordsman in history. And
Hmm.
he's trying to just kind of reconcile his desire for enlightenment and inner peace and to be the strongest
Hmm.
with each other. Like he's at war with himself. And you'll get funny little moments like where the monk asks him, "So, did you talk to the girl you liked?" And teasing him, "You're such a pussy." So he does this thing and he's shaving the monk's the back of the monk's head and makes a face out of the hair like a smiley face, and he's like, hmm. You have the monk, yeah, do it properly. He's just angry. You get scenes like that, but then you'll get scenes like where
That's awesome.
Musashi will, yeah, where you get some scenes though where Musashi will um, uh, ask himself when because he's hung from a tree, like he's tied up, not from the
Mhm.
neck, but like tied up, hung from a tree and left to starve.
Mhm.
The branch breaks though, and so he gets free. But the monk drags him up to a mountain and says, "I will kill you here if you do not, if you do not change your ways."
Mhm.
Musashi's response is to start bashing his skull on the rock, trying to kill himself.
Mhm.
And the monk then stops him and says, "Why are you doing this? Like no ordinary man would want to do this."
Mhm.
And Musashi just starts crying because he's thinking, why was I born if I was just to be hated?
Mhm.
And there's this very touching moment where the monk, where he actually, he says this, and the monk pulls him back and holds him and just says, like, you were not born to be hated. You were born to be loved, as you are now, my child.
Mhm.
And where like there's really touching moments like that.
Mhm.
It's very sentimental, almost sloppily so, but it's also very comedic.
Mhm.
Um, like the trouble Musashi gets into, and it's pretty funny, but
Sounds.
it's
This
never like, hmm?
it's a manga you're talking about,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah. Inoue Takahiko.
is there anime as
It
well, or just manga?
no anime. People want it. This has sold more than I think like 30 or 50 million copies
Wow.
worldwide. It's a mega seller, but the guy just quit, and he didn't want to make it into an anime. He just quit making the manga eventually. He
Okay.
made 327 or 29 chapters,
Wow.
like 20 volumes. Then he just said, "Well, I quit." He was the best-selling manga guy, and he's like, "I quit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Well,
go draw sports stuff."
he did it all.
Mhm.
Maybe
Yeah,
he already conquered the world, the
yeah,
manga world.
yeah. He's a millionaire, and he's like, "Well, I didn't do this for money, but I'm gonna quit, and I'm gonna go draw basketball manga." And his basketball manga never sell as well as this, and he's like, "Well, I'm happy. I don't do it to sell."
Okay.
But I'm still mad at him because I'm like, come on, man, just finish the damn story.
Oh, he didn't
But
finish the story. That sucks.
no, he's only like halfway through
Wow.
because he's adapting the novel of Musashi. He
Mm,
stopped at the halfway mark and said, "Well, I quit."
okay.
And he's like,
Well,
"Yeah,
I read the Shogun. That was pretty good. I like that
oof,
book.
I'm sorry, I hate that book."
Really?
Yeah, it's just such trash because the way it presents the Japanese, I'm like, nope, stop disrespecting Akechi's daughter, Gracia. Now, Maria in that book, how her husband
Mm,
beats her. Historically, love story. He was in
mm-hmm,
love with her, never laid a hand on her, nearly
mm,
died to protect her. She was also not a whore like she is in the book. She's actually someone who was a Christian convert who
mm-hmm.
loved her husband and um,
Is this the lady who gets with the English dude?
yep. They completely mucked up the story.
Wow.
Well, the author completely mucked up the story. Uh, Also, there's no penis comparison scene of between Tokugawa and Hideyoshi. I think that was just his imagination. The English did bathe back then religiously twice a day. Probably like there's a lot of misconceptions about history of Europe and Japan, so that I found it one of the most subversive reads.
Wow.
Uh, so I just, when I was done, I threw it across the room and I was like, ugh. I
Yeah,
read it when I was studying for my major.
I would have missed all of that stuff, but I did like just the attention to Japanese level of honor and hardcoreness.
They actually got the honor. The guy got the honor wrong for the most part. I found.
Really.
Um, well, it's just he got some things right, but like
Mm-hmm.
the samurai who jumps off the cliff, for example, the samurai would be like, "Now, hold on, we're not going to just throw our lives away. We're going to try to figure out a way down." Okay, that's not getting his attention. Okay, they'd figure something out. They were very creative and clever. The book
Mm-hmm.
presents them as retarded. I
Okay.
found as not very bright people, but they're
Mm,
incredibly intelligent, cunning.
right.
Um, the the book, um, The book also neglects to mention that the Englishman, the actual Englishman, the historic figure, I think it was some Michael Adams or something, the historic figure, he actually enjoyed his life in Japan. Once he settled in, he was like, I'm not going back. And
Mm.
we know because like 15 years after he got there, some other Englishmen arrived and were like, we could bring you home. No, I'm good. It's like, oh, how about, aren't you curious about your kids? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
some of the
It's
stuff
like,
compared to Japan
well,
back then.
yeah, like he assimilated. And the book got some things right about the honor code, but
Mm.
uh, Clavel clearly didn't read Hagakure and
Right.
Bushido. So, yeah, I'm nitpicky because this was my major. I was steeped
Oh,
in
great.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's Hollywood Japanese stuff, which isn't. I found Last Samurai even more historically accurate than it. And I was like, dear heavens, Last Samurai got it right better than you.
What
But
about
I know I'm sorry if I'm trashing everything you like. I'm so sorry. I'm coming off as an ass.
it doesn't bother me. It's good information, because I never read all the stuff that you read about Japan. I just got everything I got from what I learned in language, but it's mainly just language at school.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I learned some of the honor stuff, but everything else I got from anime, basically.
Mm.
So
If you want to understand the samurai and whatnot, you could read Yoshikawa Eiji's Musashi, but
mhm.
also Heike Monogatari and Taiheki. These will give you a very, how do I put it? These three books will give you a good insight into how the culture kind of worked and the
Mhm.
honor. And the Taiga dramas do a good job also exploring that and
Mhm.
the psychology and the morality of the time period.
Cool.
And in a lot of cases. So, like, they could inflict mind-blowing amounts of cruelty, but the samurai ultimately were still sentimental in their own way.
Yeah.
And yeah, like they were capable of very sloppy emotional outbreaks and whatnot. And um, there were some samurai who had remarkable noblesse oblige, where they'd sooner die for their peasants than they would let a single peasant die. And this is not in Shogun. Now, there were some who would wipe some out, just didn't care. Like Oda
Mhm.
Nobunaga didn't really care. But then you've got Kusunoki, Masashige, who would basically weep when a peasant would die. He couldn't
Mm.
abide the idea. So, like, you got these very divergent
Yeah.
things.
Just like
But
people, just like people anywhere, right? Any
yeah,
people
although yeah, and
have a
but
nice
I imagine yeah. So, do you also write any other fairy stories like outside
I
Japan?
um. So I was gonna say, I also just I was posting about it that I recently did all the mythologies, at least the major core
Mm.
mythology stories from all the different countries. Like I read them
Oh,
all,
cool. Mm.
including all the main Japanese ones as well. So
Yeah, one
that
of the
was
best.
something that inspired me to put stuff in this Japanese fairy tale. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I'm trying to think of no, the other ones. Now the Darkmoor series is an interesting series because it's kind of random because what it is actually it's based off different dreams and nightmares that I had. So anytime I have very good memory and very vivid dreams and nightmares, and I thought, you know what, that was like such an awesome story. Why didn't I write it down? And so that's how I actually came up with that series. So every single one of those series
Oh.
of the Dark is
Yeah.
coming from a dream or nightmare.
All right, that's neat. Like that's
Yeah,
such a unique and interesting approach.
yeah. So and it's pretty. If you read the Japanese one, you'll be pretty blown out at how detailed it is because I had to fill in some stuff to finish the story because you don't quite get the completed story, but
Mhm.
probably at least half the whole short story was all detailed in the dream. So even the
Mm.
words and the conversation with the Oni and everything was in the dream. And I just woke up, I quickly wrote it down before I forget the main points, and then I fleshed it out. And
Okay.
it's really awesome. You know.
Do you know any anime or stories involving Oni? Now, I know a few traditional folk tales, but it'd be useful to expand my knowledge because I plan to write an Oni into my Akuma no Ran book.
Mm. Well, you know, I did like a unique twist on it. You know, on my one,
Mhm.
it was very the Oni is very sneaky, and he's very like, but he can't hide at all. You know, it's kind of like, and he's very depressed. He has like a very, he looks like a depressed kind of businessman. Like he's like fat. He's got
Ooh.
like a red nose, flushed from sake, and he's got like thinning hair, and he's got really pasty, fatty face. You know, like so fatty skin that's very pasty, and he's kind of just talking to the kid, trying to convince him to come a little closer. And he's a
Oh, I see that's an
yeah,
entire stereotype. What's funny is when you'll meet some guys who look like that in Japan. They'll
yeah,
be shy as hell, but if you're just like, hi, like
yeah,
not loud, just like wave or something, you'll have them like you'll make their day. Like even if you're just polite and you're like, oh,
yeah.
they'll be like those fat businessmen or office workers are usually very sweet. They just
Oh,
their
totally.
lives suck. Their
Yeah, it was.
lives,
Yeah, exactly. It was. I don't know why I based it off that. It just
but
was
it's a good one.
in the dream, you know, and it was.
Mm.
It's like the Oni had a spell on it that made it look like that, like a really dejected kind of
Yeah,
security human.
but it's like Spirited Away. It's a matter of trying to deceive a child into coming
Yeah,
closer to devour or something. Yeah.
exactly. So that's what it's super creepy, and the way he's talking is super creepy,
Mm.
and so that was my Oni, you know, because that's the way I did it. But then once he gets captured, you see what he really looks like, and I describe it similar to the way it was described in the mythology.
Oh,
And so the mythology has some pretty good stories on Oni. Particularly, there was one about a little boy who's really small, and he goes to a cave, and he ends up there's all these Oni, there's all these dead bodies in there and bits of half-eaten humans, and he ends up fighting the Oni by getting, I think he gets swallowed and cuts his way out of it. And mine was pretty similar to
I know
that.
that
It's
story.
how he ends up beating it, you know.
Cool.
Not exactly the same, but you know, the first part of mine was very unique, and then in the actual layer of the Oni was heavily inspired by that mythology.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
as far as anime, to answer your other question, I think the one is pretty good with what is it? This I don't know how accurate it is, but it's creepy, that's for sure. The different types, because they're all different types of different Oni. The one it's called like the seven. It's not seven sins, but I have to look it up for you. But it's the one where the boy basically gets he's missing all his organs when he's born. Like he's
Oof.
missing his eyes, he's missing his legs because his father basically made a pact with the seven Oni that, you know, if they give him the special powers, you know, and you know,
They'll
then he has
sell
to,
his son.
yeah, he has to trade something. And so what he does is every time he makes a pact, he doesn't know this, but the Onis take something from his newborn baby that's about to be born, and then there's seven. He does seven things, so then he's missing seven things like of his body, and then he anyway grows up to be a crazy samurai freak creature. Like
Mm.
basically, he's got like his puppet arms and legs with swords on them, and he just gets really
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
But there's all different types of demons in that different Oni that he has to kill, and then he gets part of himself back from them when he kills them. So
Strange.
that one is pretty good. It has some pretty good different Oni in it, and then yeah, I'll try and think of Ninja Scrolls is good. You know, they've got well, they're not technically Oni, but definitely good ideas for Oni because they're kind of like Oni, the bad guys.
Yeah. Let me see something. Just looking something up. Um, Oh yeah, I remember a few of these. I'm just looking up some Oni stories from anime,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
remember watching some of them as a kid. They must have blocked them out.
yeah.
Um,
Requiem from a Dream is pretty good. That one's pretty good. Got some creepy spirits in it.
let me see. Hmm. Sorry about that.
Ah.
My internet started to give out. Could you repeat that?
Oh, I was just saying, Requiem from a Dream or something like that is a pretty good one as well. Some
Hmm.
creepy spirits in it.
Okay. And um, seems like um, seems like you've got quite the interest in Japan. What of your own country? Like, do you have any folk tales or anything of there in there?
I mean, there is, but they're very, you know, I don't want to say simple because it's not really the right word for it, but it's not like an expanded mythology that I'm part indigenous on my mum's side. Um, and so really, if you're going to say Australian,
Australian.
yeah, yeah, indigenous Australian Aborigine. So there's a lot of different, um, things about how the certain river was made. It's like a giant snake that swam up that
Ah,
area. You know what I mean? Or how the birds got their colors, and they like
stuff
that.
like that.
So it's not
Yeah,
necessarily like any mythology sagas, at least that I know. Maybe there is, but
it's not as interesting,
yeah, I like them
to put it
myself.
bluntly.
Yeah, I like them myself, but it's not like a mythology that you could. I mean, you could write, you
No,
could create something, but I
it's
don't know anything big.
it's not even as interesting as fairy tales like from Europe and whatnot.
Hmm.
Just to put it bluntly, like because what moves people a lot more is folklore. And when I say that, I mean like Brothers Grimm, Perrault, or Japanese Oni stories and whatnot,
Hmm.
or mythologies. These things move people a lot more than um, native stories, to put it bluntly. Um, and it's not that I say that to be mean or anything, but it's just the flat truth of it. And the best stories are like the Greek, Norse, and Japanese, and even Egyptian myths. They're just the most interesting out
Hmm.
there. The Japanese myths, there's few of them. Like I'm not counting the Oni stories. I mean like just purely like the Amaterasu,
Yeah, yeah.
the and whatnot. Like
Is another,
um
and is
yeah,
another.
like the stories in Kojiki. Good book. Very few stories can compare with what's in the Kojiki. But
Hmm.
like this is the thing, like a lot of people get offended about that stuff, but let's just call a spade a spade. It's just better. It's more interesting.
Hmm.
And it's um yeah, but anyways, like I said, I found your story of 1, 2, and 3 just hilarious. So
Yeah,
I
well,
wonder.
to
Hmm?
link this to mythology, I actually wrote. I did, as I said, I did study the Sumerian and Akkadian mythology collection,
Hmm.
which is all antediluvian, like pre Bible flood stuff.
Yep.
And, I read another
Which
interesting.
is
Yeah.
all I was going to say was my stories take place in the idea of a fictional version of the antediluvian period as
Okay.
well.
Great.
But my
Well.
idea is closer to Tolkien and Howard, where it's like it's an entire age and whatnot. Not as
Yeah.
far back as yours, but just like it's an entire age and mythology and magic is real, and you
Mhm.
have the Olympian gods and the Norse gods and the Japanese gods all in there and whatnot. So
I love that. Well, the
along
way.
with elves.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's kind of what inspired me to do the way I did it as well, was those same kind
Mm.
of idea. But I wanted to go back earlier to where it's, well, 2.5 million years ago, there was two things. There's the beginning of the Ice Age, and it's also
Mhm.
the date of a particularly large supernova nearby that actually wiped out a lot of the major large marine life on the planet. And
Oh,
so I chose that time because it's a cool event to have. And so the whole idea about my book is that basically there's like a whole nother
this.
culture, and it's all, and like history repeats. So they got to a very advanced stage, and then they actually, yeah, they didn't get wiped out. That either they get wiped out, or you find out that they figured out a way to get to another plane or another world to get away from it, and then history reset. Mankind just, and then they leave behind a little bit of writing, which is picked up in the Sumerian tablets, so that people can start learning to read and write again, and that's the Sumerian scrolls or something like that.
Oh,
It kind of
what I,
reignited from some scraps left over from this other
okay.
people that left.
What I was what I was going with was, well, you basically have a cataclysm, and everything's wiped out,
Yeah,
and the continent changes and whatnot. So there's pretty much nothing left. But it
yeah,
follows similar patterns of like Roman and then medieval. So like the history is cyclical, except it
yeah,
has elves and wolfram and orcs and whatnot. Cyclical, except we repeated it without them. But I have
yeah.
plans for Tolkien, Dagger I plan to have a Ragnarok,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to write the Twilight of the Gods and just have that basically involve, you know, the destruction of everything and then the rebirth and
Right.
whatnot. Because Tolkien did something like that for long after the Fourth Age. He wrote an end of the world story. I figured why
Mm-hmm.
not join in on have fun with that.
Yeah.
Um, but
Cool.
yeah, but Olymp no Machi, if you ever check it out, is kind of my first attempt at writing in a Silmarillion-ish style. And the idea is basically the lower ranking gods, the peasant gods, get upset with Zeus and just say, you know what, we're done. We're just going to kill the king. And they just rebel with the help of Odin and Amaterasu, who just decide to support the rebellion. And
Cool.
this rebellion becomes the Roman gods
Mm-hmm.
under Roma Capitolina or Roma Maxima. And that establishes a new line of gods
Mm-hmm.
in the West. But this generally shakes things up and changes the very fabric of the Western pantheon. But
Yeah.
yeah, like the antediluvian thing is a good, easy route. It's weird that not many writers since Tolkien took that approach.
Mm-hmm.
Seems a very strange thing that very few people do it. But I've noticed that there's a few writers bringing it back as an idea on Substackia. It's a little
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I like it. I think it's I also like to leave it up to, as I said, the border of what's possible and not possible. I mean,
Makes
fundamentally,
sense.
yeah, and fundamentally, it's almost a little sci-fi because
Hmm.
the concepts in the lore of magic is basically I've been studying some quantum physics, and everything, when you break it down, kind of comes down to a vibration, right? Even the
Hmm.
atoms, everything is like vibrational blips, in space, on a matrix of vibrations, and even the magic in my system is just they were able to get contact with another race of beings from another world, a different universe, a universe of light, which is why they're called the living light, right? So they do get contact with these creatures, and through advanced technology, they're able to communicate with them with pictures or images and conceptually, and they get the creatures to give them the codes, basically, of the vibrational codes for the barriers of this universe, so like matter, energy, space, and time, and what the specific codes are to alter it. So, and that's what spells are, basically. They're the specific
Mm.
codes to alter one of the laws, the natural laws of the universe. And so
Okay.
that's how they cracked magic in the book, and that's what the magic system is based off. And it's kind of like plausible, I mean, it's still fantasy, but it's almost sci-fi, and that's what I mean
Mm.
by everything's on the border of, well, it kind of could with modern science theory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I I stick with just it being fantasy and whatnot, and leaving it
Yeah.
on and I've not really fully defined things for my readers because I want to keep it mysterious for them. But I figured it all out on my own.
Yeah.
I know, like for me, it's a hard magic system. For them, it's soft magic system. So you know what I mean? Like I like to leave it a mystery to them and have a bit of fun and mix some Tolkienian and Howardian ideas of magic. While for me, I keep it pretty. For me,
Yeah.
it's clear. For others, it might not be, and it's on
Right.
purpose so that I don't. Because the idea is that I want the reader to have some mystery.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I probably explained mine more just now than I did in the whole book.
Makes sense.
In the
No,
book,
but
it's like what you
I'm
said,
happy.
where it's hinted at with little bits of history that they find and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, and although weirdly, I'm having more fun writing the lore and the ancient history of the elves and the War of the Elves and Hela, and than I am like the actual current day novels and whatnot. And the problem is, I have to keep ripping myself from the ancient elf stories to
Yeah.
write the actual stories.
Right.
But one of these days, maybe once I finish all the current crop of novels, I'll just start doing nothing but elf stories.
Okay.
And
I love that stuff. I love the Silmarillion, and
it's all I want to write. That's the problem.
what I did.
People are like,
I was just gonna say what I did to kind of satisfy it because I love the world building as well.
mhm,
Beginning of every chapter, there's 22 chapters. Almost everyone has a little world building note. Like you
mhm.
read one of them, which was the dwarves' hand that was taken. That was like a note taken from their diary. Um, or there'll be like history, like a page of history detailing some. It's not even they're not even existent anymore, but some group and there was a war and they fought each other and this one won over and then you'll
Yeah,
see like maybe a little bit of a relic of something in one of those notes in the chapter, or
yeah,
they'll there'll be like a speech from like a mage on how he did something, and then you'll see it kind of applied in it like secretly throughout the chapter, of that, how that spell worked, or
yeah.
there's there's all these every city has its own kind of ethnic and culture, and there'll sometimes be historical notes of how
Hmm.
it's like that, and they also have their own religions, and there's just they're all funky weird little different cities and towns that have their own codes and religions.
Yeah. All right. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's
Seems
how I
like
get
you've
my
planned out a lot.
yeah, and it just makes it more real for the reader. They're like, oh, this is the thing that I saw in that note from that diary, or from, you know what I mean.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, that's interesting. Um, I'm actually gonna have to go soon, so
Yeah, no problem.
we'll
Do
have
you
to wrap it up.
No problem.
Um,
Did you get
sorry
that
about that.
sample? Because I did kind of promise my
Oh
people
yeah,
that,
I did.
they'd be seeing a peak sample, from Stefan Rudnicki on my audiobook. It'd be
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, that was neat.
Yeah, it'd be cool. Can we if we could
Yeah.
there
I'm
for the
I didn't catch that. You broke up.
I was just gonna say it'd be cool if we could play it on this podcast for the people that I said, because I told them that they'd get to see it.
All right.
Prologue. These are the tales of the old Earth, set in the year 1541 of the Skier calendar, circa 2.5 million years BCE by current reckoning. The known world and its major powers exist in an age of contentment and complacency. Decadent cultures persist amid the fruits of their forebears' industry and genius. The physical structures and technological remnants of a long-gone advanced civilization are everywhere. Yet those who might understand or operate such relics no longer exist. The ancients, the greatest minds of that age, disappeared thousands of years ago. their societies undone by a strange and unknown event. Few who now inhabit their crumbling cities could replicate such works, nor even grasp the principles behind the...
What the?
No, it's cutting out a little bit.
avenue, gather dust and cobwebs in dark corners, or rust in heaps across plazas, patios, and rooftop terraces. Prophecies of long-forgotten gods still rumble through the land,
Wow.
and like whispers on an evil wind, weigh heavily on the minds of a largely uneducated and thus deeply superstitious race of men. Who were the ancients? Where did they go? What was the cosmic ruination they sought to avoid? And what brought about their own untimely end? This is a task for the brave and the willing to uncover. The answer lies not within the walled cities of man, but out there in the outlands.
That was pretty cool, hey?
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually really cool.
So that's just the prologue at the beginning of my story.
Oh.
And but I'll post. It wasn't as great quality over the stream, so for anyone who wants to listen to it, I'll post it as well on as a attachment online to the stream. But yeah, Stefan Rudnicki, I know you got to go. I just wanted to say that it's amazing working with him. You know, he's you know, this is for any writers that end up watching this. You know, when at least if you're like me, you know, you submit your stories to literary agents and public publishers. You know, I probably submitted to about 70, and they all reject it. And you know, you start to think that you start to try and change your story or redo it, and you start to once you've edited.
I've given up on trad or dead pub or trash pub, as I call them these days, because you can't put anything out that's decent.
Right.
Lit agents, I've talked to a few. I just think they're imbeciles.
Right.
But most of the Substack people, even some of the best indies I've seen lately, all rejected.
Right.
And I've seen most of the lit agents and publishers basically put out nothing but trash, really, and like Legends and Lattes or something. It's trash that no one with any taste, and so that's where I view it as you submitted to 70. Okay, 70 morons.
Right.
But the thing about it is that it's getting to be cheaper to pay for an editor yourself, and you may as well put it out yourself or put it out with an indie publisher, because indie publishers are out there. They're good. They're reasonable, and they're legitimate publishers. And, you know, like you could put it out through them or on your own. And after you get a good editor and you find yourself a good cover designer and whatnot, and there you go. Not to mention, most publishers in the traditional sphere don't know how to sell, and they've admitted in a few articles they've only sold about 12 copies per book for a lot of books. Most of their money is made off of old classics.
Right.
So
yeah, they don't know how to sell. They don't know how to market. It's true.
Yeah,
yeah.
The key is to go to the conventions, like anime conventions, book conventions, not book fairs, conventions, because all the fans, all the readers go to conventions. You go to the conventions, you'll find tens of thousands of readers. Bring 10 large boxes full of your book, and you'll sell like hotcakes. Also, children's hospitals and women's shelters are good places for dropping books off. I know I'm not trying to be severe or anything. I'm just trying to.
No, that's good. No, that's some good advice, I think, for anyone listening and for myself. I was just gonna say,
I gotta learn this advice too.
yeah, I think it's a great idea. And all I was gonna say is, it's been great working with Stefan. I'll post the sample, but he's someone
He
who's,
sounds amazing.
yeah, I mean, he's such a nice guy. I think he was nominated as the Golden Voice Award or whatever. He's a Grammy Award-winning audiobook producer, and he's done
Wow.
over 2,500 audiobooks, including Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game and a bunch of other really
Wow.
famous. I mean, that one sold about 85,000 on Audible, 85,000 sales. So, you know, I submitted to so many different people, and then I sent him this. I sent a query to his. It's a hybrid publishing, so yeah, you have to pay for some of it. But I just said, look, what is it? You know, how does this work? You know, I'm a big fan of Stefan, and I'd love it if he would narrate my work. Or, you know, is there any chance? And And he actually emailed me back personally, saying, hey, you know, yes, you know, thanks for the kind words, and send me something. So I sent him my manuscript. And he read it, and he got back to me in like 2 days and said, yeah, I like your writing very much. And it's got the feeling of old school fantasy adventure. And yeah, definitely I want to read it and produce it for you, you know? And someone like him who's been reading Jack Vance and all these quality authors and, you know, Orson Scott Card, just, you know, to say, wow, you know, this is awesome. He loves my writing. I was like, hey, you know, it kind of lets you know, just because you're getting rejected by all these retards doesn't mean your writing sucks or that you have to even change it. It's just you got to find the right person, or you got to find the right market, or whatever, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, when you've got the industry that's like a snake eating its own tail, you start to think, is it me? Is it them? What's going on? And if you say it's them, you know, a lot of people will say, well, you're just resentful because they didn't accept you.
Right.
But, you know, like I thought that was, you know, like I went through a period where it's like, it must be me. It must be me. There's something about my books or me that's not acceptable or that's not good. And, you know, then I start my Substack, people start piling in, and, you know, you start going, well, I guess I'm lucky here. But then how I discovered all the problems with the industry is people start sending me articles and saying, Joe, did you take a look at this? What do you think of this? And I'm going, what do I think of what? What do you think of this aspect of the industry? And you go, you know, you read the article and you go, oh my gosh, I have no idea. You know, like some of them are New York Times, some of them are this and that. And you're going, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So yeah, it's something which it's not you, I would call. It's not you. It's the industry is ultimately broken and has been for decades. Tolkien couldn't get in until one of his former students who worked in the industry said, hey, here's my professor. He writes really good. Yeah, well, I don't know about it. Come on, just publish him. And like Tolkien almost did not get published. Howard was not published properly until after he's dead. And it's like,
I know. Yeah, well, he was struggling paying him and all this stuff, and while he was alive. It's a weird thing, and I'm hoping that my book gets well known enough to get people. What I really enjoy is people reading what you write. That's the best thing, right? Reading what you write and telling you things they liked about it or laughed or whatever. I'm like, oh, hopefully it doesn't happen after I'm dead. You know what I mean? Like these other guys.
I know, right? I know that'd be horrible. And what I hate is that just having to step out of the, like, having to do audio stuff again. And because I have some audio training, and I'm like, I gotta go back to that and turn out audio books or radio dramas. And I'd rather just write while listening to trashy horror movies. But like Ouija, I shouldn't enjoy stuff like that, but I enjoy just listening to that while writing. But like, I'd rather do that than like do all the work. No, like make sure I get the music right, make sure I, reading the book in the right voice, trying to remember all the character voices right. It's hard. And kudos to Stefan. He reads better than I ever could. And the thing is, this is, and it's time consuming. Like he recorded and he edited it so well.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, this is something that is very useful to market our books and whatnot. And there's a whole slew of readers who would read it or who will read it, but they don't have the time immediately. They'll pick up the audiobook, they'll listen, and then
Right.
in a few months they'll just pick up the book and read it themselves because they've got the time.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and
like,
I see where you're going with this, and that's why I chose to invest a little bit of time and money as well to get this quality audiobook produced, because I think it's a more sellable product than a book right now in this market. And I think the reading, the literacy level, even though people might argue this, and I know education is more widespread in this day and age, but I think I'm talking about it's available to more countries and into smaller indigenous locations and stuff. It's more widespread literacy, but I think that the quality of literacy has crashed from in the 1900s. And
to an extent,
what's that?
I'll say, yeah, to an extent, yeah.
Yeah, some people,
but
in broader masses,
Yeah, what I was going to say though is my time as a school teacher in Japan and in Quebec have kind of taught me it's kind of affected me so that I've seen a lot of students who I'd have to tell them, like, can you put the book down? Most of my students, I was very blessed. So I saw a lot of school kids, like in Japan, the school, like, I'd go out to get them because it was a conversation school, and all my students were glued to their phones, just reading like on their Kindles. And I'm like, okay, put the Kindle down. You gotta step into the class. You actually have to pay attention. I remember one girl just gave me this ferocious glare, like, to me when I said, put the book down. Oh, she just gave me this look like, what did you see to me? Not like she didn't say that, but it's like, and I'm like, you'll have time to read at the end of class. Don't look at me that way. And then at the end of class, she's like almost shoving a kid to get to her book so she could read that. But then in Quebec, it's like people are asking, did you read Proceda? Did you read that? Did you read this? Did you read this? So I think that in a lot of places, the literacy level is still, and the passion for literacy is still really there. But there are places, on the other hand, that I've observed where no kid is reading. You could put the book in front of them and they'll never touch it. So it's one of those things where it's very, very odd. Like in Japan, Quebec, France, they're reading voraciously like there's no tomorrow. They can't stop. But then, like, I got school teachers.
I would say in America, I think it's probably less literacy level. Yeah.
I'm friends with some teachers David B. Gorder, shout out to him. Great writer. He's a school teacher as well. And he's told me literacy level in my classes are, and it's like, ooh. But then I've got an older brother who's a school teacher as well. So it's like, he's like, yeah, literacy in some of these English schools.
Yeah.
Not very good.
Yeah. Probably Japan, China, and certain other foreign speaking countries is, doing better than the English. A lot of the major English countries.
I know some people in Germany who've told me German kids are still reading. So like Germany, France, Bulgaria, I think, China, Korea, Japan, people are reading.
Right.
But outside those places, it's like.
Well, as I said, I lived in New York City for 7 years, and I'm sorry for your pain. Yeah, I like parts of it, and parts of it I don't like, But I did like the hustle bustle, and I also did a lot of. I went out and did 100 surveys in college kids one day just about books, and what I found out is that they basically get referrals. What they get is referrals on social media from friends is what would make them read, and also and what's at school or in the college library. And then also I said, okay, well, where would you get? Most of them were still reading hard copy books. And I asked, where would you get it from? Like what source? And the highest percentage was from the college library. So that's an interesting piece of information for any writers out there. By the way, Stefan, the Skyboat Media contract I have, they do have library distribution. So my audiobook is going to go into libraries in America.
Cool.
Pretty cool, right?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry for interrupting. That's freaking cool.
Yeah, so that's but yes, that's but what I saw was a lot of people listening to audiobooks in the city more than carrying a book around on the subway, or or they're at the gyms, they're always listening to a podcast, true crime, or an audiobook. So that's why I thought an audiobook in this day and age, and also driving, whatever, seems to be a good sellable product,
Neat. Well, like I said, oh, wait, there's someone in the chat. That's unusual. How are you guys? Well, I'll turn the question over to you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
And now the quality of literacy in Asia is rising, especially reading in English. In some places. In Korea and China, yes. Japan, it's actually dropping. Okay. Japan, it's collapsing. But the interesting thing with Japan is that literacy, well, kids still read a lot. They're just reading in Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think in French, and I think either Korean, and maybe, what was it, Portuguese or German or something? Probably German. So it's like they're focusing on certain languages. English is becoming, well, I mean, their English rates have collapsed to 76th in the world, and it's still dropping. The Japanese ability for English is plummeting like a rock or an anvil. And it's not that, like I said, I've taught there, and the kids are not stupid.
Right.
It's just the English became so common. It was a fad. Now it's fading, and the interest is dying. They still like a lot of foreigners. Like, you're Australian. They'll love you. They love Australia. But the thing is, the interest in the external work. Yeah, like the interest outside the Commonwealth and France and Germany is kind of collapsing.
Because of these rude TikTokers, the damn TikTokers in Japan ruining it for everybody.
Probably. But the Japanese, just, like I said, English is not an interest anymore. It's getting to be more French, and it's why I've gone back to school for my French education, so that if ever, like, I want to go back there and teach, I'll be able to get a better job teaching French than English, because English pay rates have collapsed. So pretty soon the market will be much more profitable being French. But anyways,
cool.
We also have Ace Cluck. Interesting name. Hello, Ace. I can't cluck right now because we're leaving soon. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show. That audiobook news is really freaking cool.
Yeah.
Good for you, man.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, Blackstone, so it's Skyboat Media and Blackstone Publishing is the publishing house that partners with Skyboat Media. Skyboat Media does the recording and everything, and then they have a whole mastering team and then a pre-sale media team that quality control it. And then it gets published through the distribution channels by Blackstone Publishing House, which has the presence in the libraries as well as online platforms, all the different online platforms as well. So that was the contract I signed, is going to basically go out on all those distribution lines as in audio format. And another exciting thing with that's already exciting to me, especially because it's going to be so awesome with Stefan recording it, like you heard the sample. The other exciting thing is that Stefan gave me a personal referral to Blackstone, to the print partner, like portion of Blackstone Publishing House. And they're actually reviewing my submission on this kind of like a referral line from Stefan directly for a print contract as well. So fingers crossed for me. They're still reviewing that. So if I land the print contract, that'll double my distribution. I'm not sure. Did it cut out, or did you get that?
I'm just getting so bad over here. Clucks. Yeah, it's getting hard to get these things in front of people. I do agree, Monsieur Cluck. Yeah, across 2 platforms and whatnot, 75K views is amazing. That's actually really, 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 really good. A lot better than what we're probably doing.
Yeah.
But I'm probably gonna have to grab this stream and slap it onto. I agree. I'll have to slap it onto my brother's crew and my larger channel, and when I do, I'll stick the link to your Substack, and if you can provide me the link, when either through Discord or something, for your audiobook, I could stick that in there as well, so that people could then listen to the whole thing.
You talk about, so my audiobook is it's set for release in July.
Okay, then we're gonna have to get back together at that time and
we can play it
and mark.
We'll pick a really funny scene with the dwarfs all fighting each other and talking and stuff, and we can play that on at the release.
Cool.
Awesome, man.
I have no idea what global is. But yeah, all right. Well, everyone subscribe to Alucard's Substack. Don't forget to, which actually after this, I should probably stick it here. So I'm going to go dig that up right now. And I'm going to stick that in the comment section because it just helps better with the algorithm. And I will encourage everyone, as said, go subscribe to him. Very talented author, hilarious guy. And on top of that, he's an Australian. So, you know, that means he's automatically cooler than the average bear.
Thanks, man.
So
I appreciate having you on.
Until next time, everyone, take care.